Admiral Sarah Chen stood before the massive holographic display in the command center of Terra Station, humanity's primary orbital defense platform. The blue glow of Earth hung beneath them, peaceful and serene, completely unaware of the message that had just arrived through the quantum relay network. Her weathered hands gripped the metal railing as she read the translation for the third time, her mind struggling to process the implications. The message had come from the Galactic Council, an organization that Earth had only recently learned existed. For decades, humanity had been sending radio signals into space, hoping for contact with alien life. What they hadn't expected was to discover that they were considered a myth by most of the galaxy. Earth, it turned out, was classified as a Class X deathworld, a planet so hostile that no intelligent life could possibly evolve there. The idea that humans existed was dismissed by galactic scientists as impossible. "Admiral, the linguistics team has finished their analysis," reported Commander Marcus Webb, her second in command. His face was grim as he handed her the detailed translation. "It's worse than we thought." Chen took the tablet and began reading. The hegemony, a massive empire that controlled nearly a quarter of the galaxy, had begun what they called the Great Purification. World after world was falling to their massive fleets. Billions of sentient beings were being enslaved or exterminated. The message was a desperate plea from the remaining free worlds, begging for any civilization with military capability to come to their aid. What made the message particularly interesting was its destination. It wasn't sent to Earth specifically, but rather broadcast on an emergency frequency to any world capable of space travel. The Council had included Earth in their database as a precaution, never believing that anyone would actually respond from the legendary Death World. "How long until the Joint Chiefs arrive?" Chen asked, her eyes still scanning the tactical data included with the message. The hegemony's forces were massive, numbering in the tens of thousands of ships. Their technology appeared to be centuries ahead of humanity's current capabilities. "Transport just docked, ma'am. They should be here within the hour," Webb replied. He hesitated for a moment before continuing. "Admiral, there's something else you should know. Our deep space monitoring stations have been picking up unusual energy signatures at the edge of the solar system. It's possible we're already being watched." Chen nodded grimly. It made sense that if the galaxy knew about Earth, even as a myth, some faction might eventually come to investigate. The question was whether they were friends or enemies. The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. The Joint Chiefs of Staff arrived via secure transport, along with representatives from every major Earth government. The debate was intense and heated. Some argued that humanity should remain hidden, that revealing their existence would only bring destruction. Others insisted that they had a moral obligation to help civilizations facing extinction. Dr. Elizabeth Hoffman, Earth's leading xenobiologist, stood at the center of the argument. "You have to understand," she said, her voice carrying across the conference room. "According to their own data, we shouldn't exist. A death world can't support complex life, let alone an intelligent species capable of space travel. Our very existence challenges everything they believe about evolution and planetary classification." General Harrison, the gruff leader of Earth's combined military forces, leaned forward. "That might be exactly the advantage we need. If they think Deathworlders are impossible, they won't be prepared for what we can do." "And what exactly can we do?" asked President Martinez of the Earth Federation. "Their fleets number in the thousands. We have maybe 200 ships capable of interstellar travel, and most of those are exploration vessels, not warships." Chen had been quietly studying the tactical data during the entire debate. She finally spoke up, her voice cutting through the argument. "We're looking at this wrong. Yes, they have more ships, and yes, their technology is more advanced, but look at their casualty reports from recent battles." She activated the holographic display, showing fleet engagement data. "The average battle lasts 6 to 8 hours. Casualties are minimal on both sides. Their weapons are designed for shield penetration and clean kills. They're fighting a civilized war. Meaning? Asked General Harrison. Meaning they've never fought anyone from a death world. They've never faced an enemy that evolved in an environment where everything is trying to kill them every single day. Chen's eyes had a dangerous glint. We don't fight civilized wars. We fight to survive. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity had evolved on a planet that was actively hostile to life. Natural disasters, predators, diseases, resource scarcity. Every aspect of human development had been shaped by constant struggle against overwhelming odds. Other species might have evolved on worlds where cooperation and peaceful coexistence were the norm. Commander Webb pulled up Earth's military history on the display. In our recorded history, we've had over 15,000 wars. We've weaponized everything from rocks to atomic energy. We've turned farming tools into instruments of death and figured out how to make explosives from household chemicals. Dr. Hoffman added her own perspective. Our psychology is completely different, too. Most galactic species seem to have evolved as prey animals or herd creatures. They think in terms of consensus and group survival. Humans are apex predators. We think in terms of hunting, territory, and individual survival. The debate continued for another hour, but the outcome was becoming clear. Earth couldn't ignore the genocide happening across the galaxy, and their unique perspective might be exactly what was needed to turn the tide. President Martinez finally called for a vote. It was unanimous. Earth would answer the distress call. Admiral Chen, he said formally, you're hereby authorized to take command of Earth's first expeditionary fleet. Your mission is to make contact with the Galactic Council and offer whatever assistance Earth can provide. Chen nodded solemnly. I'll need every available warship, plus our best crews. This won't be a diplomatic mission for long. Over the next 2 weeks, Earth's shipyards worked around the clock. Every military vessel was retrofitted with the latest human weapons technology, kinetic projectile systems, nuclear warheads, chemical explosives, and electromagnetic pulse devices. The full arsenal of human warfare was prepared for deployment. The ships themselves were a sight to behold. Unlike the sleek, elegant vessels preferred by most galactic civilizations, human warships were built like fortresses. Heavy armor plating covered every surface. Redundant systems ensured they could continue fighting even after sustaining massive damage. They looked exactly like what they were: weapons of war built by a species that had learned survival through violence. Commander Sarah Rodriguez, humanity's most experienced fighter pilot, was selected to lead the starfighter squadrons. Her briefing to the pilots was simple and direct. Everything we know about space combat comes from fighting other humans. These aliens have never faced an enemy that thinks like we do. Use that advantage. The fleet that assembled at the edge of the solar system was impressive by human standards. 57 warships of various classes, from massive battle cruisers to fast attack vessels. Each ship carried a full complement of fighters and assault craft. The total crew numbered nearly 30,000, the largest military force humanity had ever assembled. As they prepared for their first jump to hyperspace, Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of her flagship, the UES Indomitable. The massive vessel was Earth's most advanced warship, bristling with weapons and protected by armor thick enough to withstand direct nuclear strikes. All ships report ready for jump, Admiral, reported the navigation officer. Chen took one last look at Earth through the view screen. She wondered if she would ever see her homeworld again. Signal the fleet. We jump in 60 seconds. The countdown proceeded smoothly. At 0, 57 human warships vanished into hyperspace, carrying with them the hope of countless civilizations and the fury of a species that had never learned to surrender. What they found when they emerged would change the galaxy forever. The coordinates provided by the Galactic Council led them to a system under siege. A dozen worlds circled a dying star, and surrounding them was the largest military fleet any human had ever imagined. Thousands upon thousands of alien vessels, their sleek hulls gleaming in the starlight. But it wasn't the size of the hegemony fleet that caught Chen's attention. It was what they were doing. The alien ships were systematically destroying the orbital installations around each planet, taking their time, following what appeared to be carefully planned protocols. They were conducting what could only be described as a methodical extermination. "My God," whispered Commander Webb. "How many people are down there?" "Sensors indicate approximately 4 billion sentient life forms across all 12 worlds," replied the tactical officer. "The hegemony has been at this for 3 days. They're not in any hurry." Chen's jaw tightened. This was exactly what she had expected. A civilized enemy conducting a civilized genocide. They probably had schedules and quotas. The very thought disgusted her. "Signal the fleet," she ordered. "All ships to battle stations. Launch all fighters. We're going in." "Admiral," said Webb cautiously, "they outnumber us 50 to 1. Maybe we should try to contact the Council first, coordinate with whatever defenses they have left." Chen shook her head. "By the time we finish talking, another 1,000,000 people will be dead. The Council wanted help. We're going to give it to them." The human fleet moved forward, accelerating toward the enemy formation. What happened next would be talked about in military academies across the galaxy for centuries to come. 57 ships from a death world were about to teach the rest of the galaxy what real warfare looked like. The hegemony forces detected the approaching human fleet when they were still 3 light minutes away. Admiral Chen watched their response with growing amusement on the tactical display. The alien ships began forming neat defensive formations, positioning themselves in geometrically perfect patterns that would maximize their shield coverage and firing solutions. "They're treating this like a training exercise," observed Commander Webb, studying the enemy movements. "Look at how slowly they're repositioning. It's like they have all the time in the world." Chen nodded grimly. "They probably do. Most galactic warfare is apparently conducted like a chess match. Careful positioning, calculated moves, minimal casualties. They're not expecting us to do anything unpredictable." The communication system crackled to life with an incoming transmission. The Universal Translator, one of the few pieces of galactic technology Earth had managed to acquire, converted the alien speech into accented but understandable English. "Unknown vessels. This is Fleet Commander Zalthak of the Hegemony 3rd Expeditionary Force. You are entering a restricted military zone. Identify yourselves and state your purpose." Chen gestured for the communications officer to open a channel. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Earth Federation Fleet. We received a distress call from the Galactic Council requesting military assistance. We're here to provide it." There was a long pause before the alien commander responded. When he did, Chen could hear confusion in his voice. "Earth? There is no military force from Earth listed in our database. Earth is a Class X death world. No intelligent life could possibly exist there." "Well, here we are," Chen replied, "and we're ordering you to cease your attacks on the civilian populations immediately." The alien's response was a sound that the translator interpreted as laughter. 57 primitive vessels against 4,000 of the hegemony's finest ships. You are either insane or severely misinformed about your capabilities." "Probably both," Chen admitted. "But we're here now, so let's see what happens." She cut the transmission and turned to her tactical officer. "What's our weapons range?" "We'll be in effective range for our main guns in 40 seconds, Admiral." Chen nodded. "All ships, this is Admiral Chen. Engage targets of opportunity. Do not attempt to match their formations. Use standard Earth combat doctrine. Hit hard, hit fast, and don't stop moving." The human fleet spread out into what appeared to the aliens as a chaotic, undisciplined charge. Instead of forming neat battle lines like civilized species, the Earth ships scattered across a wide front, each captain choosing their own targets and approach vectors. The hegemony responded exactly as Chen had hoped. They maintained their defensive formations, waiting for the humans to close to optimal firing range before engaging. It was tactically sound by galactic standards. It was also exactly the wrong thing to do when fighting humans. The UES Indomitable was the first to open fire. Instead of the clean energy beams favored by galactic civilizations, the human battleship unleashed a barrage of kinetic projectiles, massive tungsten rods, accelerated to significant fractions of light speed. The physics were simple and brutal. Kinetic energy equals 1/2 mass times velocity squared. At the speeds the human railguns could achieve, even a small projectile carried enormous destructive power. The first hegemony ship to be hit simply ceased to exist. The tungsten rod punched through its shields like they weren't there, vaporized the hull, and continued through 2 more ships behind it. The aliens' shields were designed to deflect energy weapons and particle beams, not solid matter moving at relativistic speeds. "Direct hit on 3 enemy vessels," reported the weapons officer with satisfaction. "All 3 destroyed." But Chen wasn't watching the main battle. Her attention was focused on the fighter squadrons led by Commander Rodriguez. While the capital ships engaged the enemy fleet, 200 human fighters were streaking toward the orbital installations where hegemony forces were conducting their systematic extermination. Rodriguez's voice crackled over the comm. "Phoenix Squadron. This is Phoenix Leader. Remember, those are civilian shelters down there. I want precision strikes only. Take out the hegemony ships but avoid collateral damage." The human fighters moved like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of the careful formation flying preferred by most species, they flew like atmospheric combat pilots, aggressive, unpredictable, constantly changing direction and speed. They used the orbital installations as cover, weaving between structures in patterns that would have been impossible for pilots trained in conventional space combat. The hegemony fighter response was immediate but ineffective. Their pilots had been trained for combat in open space, where visibility was perfect and movements could be calculated in advance. They had no experience with the kind of 3-dimensional thinking that came naturally to pilots from a world where terrain and obstacles were constant factors. Rodriguez spotted a hegemony bombardment ship preparing to fire on a civilian shelter and rolled her fighter into a steep dive. "Phoenix 7, Phoenix 7, I'm painting a target with my laser designator. Put a missile into that bombardment ship right now." The response was immediate. A nuclear-tipped missile streaked across the space between ships and detonated against the hegemony vessel's hull. The alien ship's shields absorbed some of the energy, but nuclear weapons were another technology the galaxy hadn't expected. The electromagnetic pulse from the detonation overloaded the ship's systems, leaving it dead in space. Back in the main battle, Admiral Chen watched with satisfaction as her fleet tore through the hegemony formations. The aliens were trying to adapt, but they were fundamentally unprepared for the human approach to warfare. Where they expected careful maneuvering and gradual attrition, they faced sudden, overwhelming violence. The human ships fought like pack hunters, coordinating attacks without formal communications. Years of training and combat experience had taught them to read each other's intentions and support each other instinctively. When the UES Defiant found itself surrounded by 6 enemy vessels, 3 other human ships immediately moved to assist without being ordered. "Admiral," reported Commander Webb, "we're receiving communications from the Planetary Defense Forces. They want to coordinate their attacks with ours." Chen glanced at the tactical display. The defenders had been fighting a losing battle for 3 days, but the arrival of the human fleet had changed everything. Suddenly, the methodical hegemony advance had been disrupted. Ships that had been systematically destroying orbital installations were being forced to defend themselves. "Put me through to their commander," Chen ordered. A new voice came over the communications system, speaking in a language the translator rendered with what sounded like multiple speakers talking simultaneously. This is Defense Commander Chiral of the Altarian Republic. We are grateful for your assistance. But you must understand the hegemony will bring reinforcements. Their main battle fleet is only days away. Then we'd better make these days count, Chen replied. Commander, I need you to coordinate with our fighters. They're going to clear the orbital space around your worlds, but I need your people to be ready to provide close support for any ground operations. Ground operations? Kirill's voice carried a note of confusion. No galactic military conducts ground operations during space combat. It's too dangerous. Chen smiled grimly. We're not a galactic military, Commander. We're humans. Everything we do is dangerous. Over the next 6 hours, the human fleet systematically dismantled the hegemony siege force. It wasn't that their individual ships were superior. In most cases, the alien vessels had better shields, more advanced weapons, and superior maneuverability. But the humans fought differently. They used tactics that no galactic military academy had ever taught because no galactic species had ever thought of them. They used their own ships as weapons, ramming damaged vessels into enemy formations. They coordinated attacks across multiple ships without complex command structures. Most importantly, they never retreated. Even when outnumbered and outgunned, human ships kept fighting until they achieved their objectives or were completely destroyed. The turning point came when the UES Vengeance, a heavy cruiser that had taken severe damage, deliberately crashed into the hegemony command ship. The alien vessel's shields absorbed most of the impact, but the psychological effect on the hegemony forces was devastating. They had never encountered an enemy willing to sacrifice their own ships for tactical advantage. All hegemony vessels, this is Fleet Commander Zalthak, came the transmission. General retreat. Fall back to rendezvous point 7. Chen watched with satisfaction as the surviving alien ships began withdrawing from the system. Of the 4,000 vessels that had been conducting the siege, fewer than 3,000 remained operational. The human fleet had lost 19 ships, but they had achieved something unprecedented. They had defeated a hegemony fleet in open combat. Admiral, reported the communications officer, we're receiving multiple transmissions from across the galaxy. Word of our victory is spreading. Chen nodded. She had expected this. In a galaxy where information traveled faster than ships, news of the first major hegemony defeat would reach every world within days. What are they saying? It's interesting, ma'am. Most of them don't believe it. They think it's hegemony propaganda designed to test their loyalty. But some of the military commanders are asking for details about our tactics and weapons. And the Galactic Council? They want to meet with you immediately. They're sending a diplomatic ship to this system. Chen looked out at the damaged but still functional orbital installations around the 12 worlds they had just liberated. Millions of lives had been saved, but she knew this was just the beginning. The hegemony would respond to their defeat with overwhelming force. They would bring their main battle fleets, and when they did, 57 human ships wouldn't be enough. Commander Webb, she said, send a message to Earth. Tell them we need reinforcements. Everything they can spare. How much time do we have? Chen studied the tactical display showing the probable location of hegemony reinforcements. According to their own intelligence data, their main battle fleet consists of over 20,000 ships. At maximum speed, they can be here in 8 days. 8 days to prepare for a battle against 20,000 ships, Webb mused. Think Earth can get us more support by then? Chen smiled for the first time since the battle had begun. Commander, you're forgetting something important. Those 20,000 ships have never fought humans before. They're expecting to face the same enemy they just lost to. Civilized opponents who fight by galactic rules. And instead they'll face a species that's been practicing warfare since before we invented agriculture. A people who've turned killing each other into an art form, and who've just discovered that there are new enemies to fight among the stars. The liberation of the Altarian system was over, but Chen knew the real war was just beginning. When the hegemony's main fleet arrived, they would learn exactly what it meant to fight against a deathworld species. And when that lesson was over, the galaxy would never be the same again. As the human fleet began coordinating with the planetary defense forces to prepare for the coming battle, Admiral Chen stood on her bridge and watched Earth's fighters returning from their missions. Every pilot had returned safely, and the orbital space around 12 worlds was clear of enemy forces for the first time in days. It was a good start. But it was only the beginning of what would become known throughout galactic history as the Deathworld War. Admiral Chen stood in the war room aboard the UES Indomitable, surrounded by holographic displays showing the positions of 23,000 hegemony vessels approaching the Altarian system. Earth had managed to send reinforcements. Another 200 ships had arrived through the hyperspace corridors, along with something that made Chen smile: a full Marine expeditionary force. "Admiral," reported Commander Webb, "the Galactic Council delegation has arrived. They're requesting an immediate meeting." Chen nodded without taking her eyes off the tactical display. "Send them over. And make sure General Morrison is there when they arrive." General Patricia Morrison was Earth's most decorated Marine commander, a woman who had led ground operations on 3 different continents and had never lost a battle. She was exactly the kind of person Chen wanted the aliens to meet. The Galactic Council delegation consisted of 3 beings from different species. The first was tall and slender with pale blue skin and large, dark eyes, a typical representative of what humans had learned were the galaxy's dominant peaceful species. The second was shorter and covered in what appeared to be natural armor plates. The third was something Chen had never seen before, a being of pure energy contained within a mechanical shell. "Admiral Chen," spoke the blue-skinned alien through the translator, "I am Ambassador Virian of the Galactic Council. We must express our gratitude for your intervention, but also our concern. The hegemony is sending their primary battle fleet, over 20,000 ships, including their planetary assault forces." 23,047 to be exact, Chen corrected, gesturing to the display. "We've been tracking them for the past 3 days. The ambassador's large eyes grew even larger. "You understand what this means? They're not just coming to retake this system. They're coming to make an example of it. Every world in this system will be completely sterilized." General Morrison stepped forward, her scarred face displaying the kind of expression that had made enemy commanders surrender rather than face her forces. "Ambassador, with respect, that's only a problem if we let them reach the planets." The armored alien spoke for the first time. "General Morrison, our intelligence reports indicate you have perhaps 300 ships. The mathematics are not favorable." Morrison smiled, and Chen could see all 3 aliens take an involuntary step backward. It wasn't a pleasant smile. "Ambassador, you're thinking about this wrong. You're assuming this is going to be a ship-to-ship battle." "What else could it be?" asked Virian. "An ambush," Chen replied. "See, here's what you don't understand about humans. We don't just fight in space. We fight everywhere. We use everything, and we never, ever fight fair." Over the next hour, Chen and Morrison outlined their plan. The aliens listened with expressions that ranged from confusion to horror. What the humans were proposing wasn't just unprecedented, it was unthinkable by galactic standards. "You want to hide your fleet inside the asteroid belt," said Virian slowly, "and use the asteroids themselves as weapons." "That's just the beginning," Morrison added. "We're also mining the hyperspace exit points, turning 3 of the moons into forward military bases, and preparing the planetary defense systems for close support operations." The energy being spoke for the first time, its mechanical voice carrying overtones of disbelief. You're planning to fight a space battle using planetary assets. This violates every principle of galactic warfare. Good, Chen replied. That means they won't see it coming. The preparation took 6 days. Human engineering teams worked around the clock, turning the Altarian system into something that had never existed before. A system-wide fortress designed specifically to destroy a superior enemy force. The asteroid belt became a maze of hidden weapons platforms and concealed ships. Human fighters, painted to match the color and texture of space rocks, took positions throughout the belt, with orders to remain completely passive until the battle began. The 3 largest moons were converted into military bases using equipment that the aliens had never seen before. Humans didn't just place weapons on the surface. They tunneled deep into the rocky cores and built installations that could survive direct hits from capital ship weapons. Most importantly, the human Marines established what they called forward operating bases on every habitable world in the system. These weren't defensive positions in the traditional sense. They were launching platforms for what Morrison called unconventional operations. "Admiral," reported Commander Rodriguez, now promoted to lead all fighter operations. "All squadrons are in position. We've got 800 fighters scattered throughout the system, plus another 400 in reserve." Chen nodded. "What about the surface teams?" "Marines are ready on all 12 worlds. They've got everything from anti-ship missiles to nuclear mines. If any hegemony forces make it to the surface, they're going to get a very warm welcome." The hegemony fleet arrived exactly on schedule, dropping out of hyperspace at the system's edge in a formation that covered thousands of cubic kilometers. It was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history, a fleet designed to crush any possible resistance through sheer overwhelming numbers. Fleet Admiral Kazthak, Supreme Commander of the hegemony forces, stood on the bridge of his flagship and studied the sensor readings. "Report," he ordered his tactical officer. "The primitive vessels from the deathworld are still in the system, Fleet Admiral. Sensors detect approximately 300 ships in various locations. They appear to be attempting to use the asteroid belt for cover." Kazthak nodded with satisfaction. The humans had fought well against a single expeditionary force, but they had made the mistake of remaining to defend a fixed position. Now they would learn the difference between tactical cleverness and strategic reality. "Begin the standard bombardment protocol," he ordered. "Clear the asteroid belt first, then eliminate the defensive installations. We'll deal with the planetary surfaces afterward." What happened next would be studied in military academies throughout the galaxy for the next 1,000 years. The hegemony fleet moved forward in perfect formation, their weapons charging as they prepared to systematically destroy every asteroid large enough to hide a ship. They fired the first volley at maximum range, sending thousands of energy beams into the asteroid belt. The impacts lit up space like a miniature star field, vaporizing rock and revealing hidden human positions. But instead of destroyed ships, the hegemony forces found empty space. The asteroids they had targeted contained no vessels, only automated transmitters designed to mimic ship signatures. "Fleet Admiral," reported the tactical officer with growing confusion, "the energy signatures are gone, but we're not detecting any debris fields. It's like the ships just vanished." Kazthak was beginning to feel the first stirrings of concern. "Intensify scans. Use active sensors." The moment the hegemony ships activated their active sensors, sending powerful energy pulses throughout the asteroid belt, they revealed their exact positions to every hidden human vessel in the system. Chen smiled as the tactical display suddenly filled with target locks. "All units," she broadcasted on the command frequency. "Weapons free. Execute Plan Alpha." The asteroids themselves came alive. What the hegemony had assumed were natural space rocks suddenly revealed massive fusion engines. Humans had spent 6 days attaching propulsion systems to asteroids, turning them into enormous kinetic weapons. Dozens of space rocks, each massing millions of tons, began accelerating toward the alien fleet. Simultaneously, hidden weapons platforms throughout the belt opened fire. But these weren't the ship-mounted railguns the hegemony had faced before. These were purpose-built installations with magnetic accelerators hundreds of meters long, capable of firing projectiles at significant fractions of light speed. The alien fleet's response was immediate but inadequate. Their formation began to break apart as captains tried to avoid the incoming asteroids while returning fire. But humans had learned something important from their previous battle. Hegemony shields were designed to deflect energy weapons, not to stop massive objects traveling at high velocity. The first asteroid impact struck a hegemony battleship amidships, punching through its shields and armor like tissue paper. The ship broke apart in a spectacular explosion that sent debris cascading through the formation. "All fighter squadrons," Commander Rodriguez's voice crackled over the comm, "execute Phoenix Protocol. Let's show them what atmosphere pilots can do in open space." 1,200 human fighters suddenly appeared throughout the hegemony formation, having used the confusion of the asteroid attack to close to optimal range. But instead of engaging in traditional dogfights, they implemented tactics that no galactic military had ever conceived. They used the hegemony's own ships as cover, flying through formations at speeds that made tracking impossible. They coordinated attacks without central command, with individual pilots making split-second tactical decisions based on years of combat experience. Most devastatingly, they targeted not weapons or engines, but command and control systems. Human intelligence had identified the centralized nature of galactic military doctrine. By destroying communication arrays and command centers, they could render entire formations ineffective. Fleet Admiral Kazthak watched in growing horror as his perfectly organized fleet descended into chaos. Ships were colliding with each other as they tried to avoid asteroids. Communication breakdowns were causing friendly fire incidents, and through it all, the human fighters continued their relentless attacks. "All ships fall back to secondary positions," he ordered. "Regroup at grid 77. But the humans had anticipated this as well. As the hegemony forces began their withdrawal, they discovered that their retreat route was blocked. 3 of the system's moons had been converted into massive weapons platforms, and they began firing the moment the alien fleet came into range. These weren't small installations. Human engineers had built railguns that used entire lunar cores as magnetic accelerators. The projectiles they fired were the size of small spacecraft, traveling at velocities that made avoidance impossible. "Fleet Admiral," reported his tactical officer, his voice carrying overtones of panic. "We're being engaged from multiple vectors. The humans have turned the entire system into a weapons platform." Kazthak was beginning to understand what his forces were facing. This wasn't a traditional space battle. The humans had weaponized everything: asteroids, moons, space stations, even the planets themselves. They were fighting a 3-dimensional battle that used the system's entire volume as a battlefield. "Signal the assault forces," he ordered. "Begin planetary bombardment immediately. If we can't defeat them in space, we'll force them to surrender by threatening the civilian populations." It was exactly the wrong decision. The moment hegemony ships began moving toward the inhabited worlds, they encountered the final element of the human defense plan. General Morrison's Marines had been waiting for this moment. "All ground-based units," Morrison's voice echoed across the system, "light them up." Every inhabited world in the system suddenly bristled with anti-ship weapons. But these weren't traditional planetary defense systems. They were weapons designed by humans specifically for destroying spacecraft from planetary surfaces. Massive railguns fired from deep underground installations, their projectiles traveling through atmosphere before striking targets in orbit. Nuclear-tipped missiles launched from hidden silos, their warheads designed to create electromagnetic pulses that would disable alien electronics. Most effective of all were the gravitational mines that human engineers had somehow managed to construct in the 6 days available. These devices created localized gravity wells that pulled hegemony ships off course, sending them crashing into planetary surfaces or each other. The battle lasted 18 hours. When it ended, fewer than 4,000 hegemony ships remained operational, and most of those were badly damaged. The mighty fleet that was supposed to terrorize the galaxy into submission had been destroyed by fewer than 500 human vessels and the resourcefulness of a species that had learned warfare on a world where everything was hostile. Admiral Chen stood on her bridge, watching the surviving alien ships retreat into hyperspace. Around her, damage control teams were already working to repair the human vessels that had been damaged in the battle. "Admiral," reported Commander Webb, "we're receiving communications from across the galaxy. Every free world wants to know how we did it." Chen smiled. "Tell them we're happy to share our knowledge. But first, I want a full report on hegemony military capabilities. If they have any more fleets like that one, we need to know about it." Ambassador Virian, who had observed the entire battle from the command center, approached with something that might have been awe in his large eyes. "Admiral Chen, in all of galactic history, no one has ever defeated a hegemony primary fleet. You've changed everything." "No," Chen replied, looking out at the stars where human ships were already beginning to spread out across the galaxy. "We've just gotten started. The hegemony wanted to show the galaxy what happens when you resist them. Instead, they've shown every oppressed world what's possible when you fight back." Within weeks, the tactics developed in the Altarian system were being implemented across hundreds of worlds. The Galactic Council established formal military cooperation agreements with Earth, and human military advisors began training alien defense forces in what became known as deathworld doctrine. The hegemony, faced with the collapse of their primary military advantage, attempted to negotiate a ceasefire. They discovered that humans were just as dangerous at the bargaining table as they were in combat. The terms of surrender were non-negotiable: complete withdrawal from all occupied worlds, reparations for war crimes, and submission to galactic law. Admiral Chen returned to Earth 6 months later, having overseen the liberation of over 200 worlds and the establishment of humanity as the galaxy's primary military power. But she knew that the real victory wasn't in the battles they had won. It was in the fact that across the galaxy, species that had lived in fear for generations were learning to fight back. They were discovering that oppression was not inevitable, that even the most powerful enemy could be defeated by courage, intelligence, and the willingness to do whatever it took to protect innocent lives. The death world had answered the galaxy's distress call, and the galaxy would never be the same.